Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Carl's Conversations. We thank all of you for coming in with us. We have a very exciting topic to talk about this evening, and I have an eclectic panel. One you can't see just yet, and here comes my buddy Alyssa. She's right in here. Thank God for you, sister.
Oh
we
my
just started.
goodness, I'm so
You,
sorry I'm
you didn't miss
late.
nothing. We just started. I'm just doing the intro.
Okay,
So
sorry
all of
guys.
y'all, God bless you. Thank you for coming. Tonight we're going to discuss election 2020. What did we learn about America? And I know that's a broad topic, but I've seen so many things, not just by way of social media, but in the media. And I'm sure that everybody has a certain perspective on on what we see and what we hear. I just want to remind our audience that if you want to share this information, it's going to be a hot conversation. So you can start a watch party. You can share, let everybody know that Carl's Conversation is back. Feel like it's been forever. I think it's been about a week and a half, 2 weeks. I've been doing a lot of heart for the community stuff. But on Carl's Conversations, we let our hair down and we get busy. So today we have a tremendous panel. We have Miss Miss Nicole coming in here from Hampton, Virginia. We have Miss Monica Gary. She doesn't have video just yet, but she'll show her face after a while. She's here in Stafford, Virginia. We have Mr. Timothy Wright Jr. down there in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And we have the homie, Miss Elisa Middleton here
Hey
in
guys.
Stafford. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
All right. So I'm going to throw this out here as an open question. We're going to do most of this probably open question today. So y'all feel free to jump in. General broad question. So far, in your own words and your own opinion, what did you learn from this election this time around? So far, what did you learn about our country? Don't be
Okay, well, I'll go first. What I learned is um, people views can be really skewed, views and or perspectives. And I've really discovered that there are a lot of people that do not have integrity or the willpower to stand up to someone when they know that they are wrong. You know, the Bible often, well, it says, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And when you see a brother or sister in need, that you are to help, what you put out there, you will get back. So I see there's not a lot of people stepping up to the plate to indicate if there is something wrong and to stand for, regardless of each other's viewpoints, or be it Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative. um, Humanity goes past, um, what's the word that I'm trying to say? It goes past the lines, left and right, up and down, north, south, east, and west. It should be about, if you see someone in need, if you see something, this is what we teach our kids. If you see something wrong, say something. And a lot of people are not stepping up to the plate to say something, to do what is right. Everybody is just going, well, this, that, and the other. So that's what I see, amongst other things.
Amen. Who gonna be next on that one?
Uh, like the ladies go first. They can go first.
All right.
Well, I'll jump in there.
Natalie.
Good evening. I've learned a lot through this election. I learned that the country is deeply divided. I've also, in these last few days since the election, has come to realize that Black America power is awfully strong, because we are the people that are taking this election over the top. We are the ones who are bringing it home in Pennsylvania. We're bringing it home in Georgia. And these areas are heavily concentrated with African Americans. So it's just so enlightening to see. I hope that we're in a new day, that we take this realization that is just, and I hope that we as a people ingest this and take this and move it forward and own this moment for ourselves, not just for Joe Biden, but for ourselves, to know and believe in the power of African American and Blacks in this country. That if we band together, if we go forward together, then there is nothing that we can't do, as this election is showing. We are going very hard for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Imagine how hard we can go for our own issues.
That's right. Thank you for that. I just want to make sure I say hello to Lee Mooring and Heather Hutchinson. I thank y'all for your presence. Also, thank you for your comments. I think y'all are right on. All right, Monica, I know you had your mic off there. Please go ahead.
The thing that has stood out to me the most, let's see, I didn't expect the level of immaturity that I've seen in the white evangelical church. And I say that not as a whole. Like, I know there's some problems. I've seen it. For those of you guys that are watching that you can't see, I'm white. My name could go either way, I guess. So, I see it. I know that there are problems. But what I've seen that has really surprised me is the lack of maturity in people that I thought they were more mature. I thought, but you know what? Nationalism is a heavy drug. So that's what I'm seeing, is that this idea that we're seeing play out, that you can't challenge racist systems and the problems of racism, the problem itself, and in the systems, that go along with making it worse, without being called unpatriotic. That's a problem. The church is tied to the state in a way it never was intended to be. Mm-hmm. And it's the very same people who will say, oh, I believe in the Constitution, I believe in this, I believe in that don't even understand separation of church and state. That I would say in some ways don't even understand Jesus, like how he works, because you forego, we have the single issue voting, and you forego this whole idea of people have free will, and then there's grace when they choose wrong. And that's it. And you love your neighbor. It's so simple. But I think a lot of people are operating out of fear, and that's a heavy drug too. That's like one of the hardest things to overcome. And that fear is new for many people, because they've never had to have their comfort confronted in a way that it has been lately. And I think that's a good thing, because hopefully as people process through that, they come out on the other side. I'm hopeful. I've seen some people in my inbox like, hey, what about this? What do you think? And really wrestling with these things. And so, but yeah, I'm just surprised, to sum it up. I'm surprised at the immaturity. And I think it stems from a lack of discipleship in the church, to be honest.
Wow. Thank you for that. Go ahead, Miss Nicole.
All right. I appreciate all the comments that have went off thus far. One thing that I think stood out the most and that is disheartening is that tolerance has become acceptance. We have tolerated so much, and 2020 has been one for the books, that now people have become numb to the very things they have been protesting against. They have become numb to racism, injustice, to the point that now the people who might have been marching next to us voted the other way. And so I'm actually saddened that we are a few days later and we don't have a decision made. It shows me that the country, though they rallied together and though they stood on different platforms, really accepted the abuse that they've been inflicted. It's become normal. They've become comfortable to it. They've been conditioned to it. So I'll vote for it. I've been in this abusive relationship for 4 years. What's another 4, right? And so I'm disheartened because I'll be honest, I thought we would have known and we would go into a new day. But the fact that it's this close, the fact that there are states looking at recounting, the fact that we're on pins and needles to figure out, I'm sorry, was anybody else in 2020? Did anybody else experience what we experienced under the current administration? That this is even a discussion? So I'm seeing that tolerance has easily become acceptance, and people have become numb to the foolishness and they accept it as it is. So
Wow. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Well, I've learned quite a bit. I think before I share too much of what I learned, I think it's of note to celebrate the fact that this year you're celebrating 100 years of women's suffrage. And this year you are on the brink of having a vice president-elect that's a female. And I think that's noteworthy. And that really shows the level of growth in our country over years. But I think if I were to step back and step outside of my experience, and I think that's the biggest thing that I think we learned in this election, we approach politics and we approach our political perspective from our persuasion. But it's Andrew Yang who was actually the one that I was really pulling for in the primaries. He made a very, very pointed tweet. And he said, when 68 million people do something, you need to figure out why. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. Instead of talking, because, and it's not to discredit anything that has been said, but once again, everything that's been said has been from our perspective and not in the shoes of someone else. What we view as spiritual immaturity, obviously the person that's doing that doesn't see it as such. So what I've learned in 2020 in this whole election cycle is when everybody's wrong, nobody's right. And just as hard as we hold to our persuasion and our convictions, the other side, whatever side, does the same. And I think that's the takeaway. It's not really about policy. It's not really about what makes sense logically, because logic is relative by many measures. It really comes down to personal conviction. And it's really hard to tell somebody to unbelieve what they believe, just as it is when it comes to a Muslim versus a Christian. Who's right? So that's what I've taken away. When everybody is wrong, nobody's right. And I think there can be some fruit in a divided country if we learn how to appreciate those divisions and those differences, because everybody's not going to agree.
Amen to that. Hey, I just want to remind our audience, if you have a question or a comment, please let us know. We'll get into it. And that was a great segue, those last 2 comments, because this is one thing I want to talk about. One thing that we've discovered, there's been some changing of the parties. We have discovered that quite many Latinos who were previously very staunch Democratic supporters actually voted for Donald Trump in this election. There was a movement, and it was called the Walk Away movement, going from Democrat to Republican. Also, there were quite many Black Americans, especially Black men, who left the Democratic Party to vote Republican. And on the other side, we saw several white evangelicals who were part of the Republican voters against Trump, who were very vocal, who were very visible. There are commercials by the Lincoln Project. Man, commercial after commercial after commercial. They hammered Donald Trump when that white evangelical sect were a huge part of his support in 2016. So I took note of those things. And this is something I said, and I'm an independent now. I don't belong to either party. And I have friends and family members who are Democrats and Republicans. But shortly after the 2016 election, I was sitting at a table with some family members who were very strong Democrats, and they were beside themselves. And this is what I said, and Tisha was there, she'll tell you. I said, I want you to listen to me. Racism is a problem, but it's not the only problem, right? Because remember, Obama flipped those predominantly white, predominantly Republican districts in 2008 and 2012. They voted overwhelmingly for Barack Obama. But in 2016, they voted overwhelmingly for Trump. So you got to take the racism card out of there, right? They voted for a black president, the first black president. They helped put him in office. What's going on in the parties that blacks and Latinos want to leave and vote Republican, and white evangelicals want to leave and vote Democrat? That's one of my observations from the election. And I want to start with you, Elisa. I'm not sure if you have seen this, what you think about it, but I want to start with you to get your reaction to that.
Well, I really can't speak for black men because I am definitely not one. But I think that the appeal for black men coming against this particular election was the disdain for Biden and his past record, and the appeal of financial gain through Trump. That's just my opinion. As far as the Latinos, I think the Latinos in Florida were the heaviest coming into this. And I was looking at the View the other day. CNN, and the broadcaster, she was Latino. She's also covered. She also does the View as well, and she made a very good perspective, saying that Florida Latinos really went for Trump because of the because of the rhetoric that he spews about, being a socialist country. Excuse me, guys, I just got off work. Being a socialist country, and she made a very poignant point, because she said that the reason that those kind of words scare them is because that you have to remember, these are the things that they flee when they come to America. So that kind of talk triggers, and that was her perspective as a Latino that has fled from Cuba to America. So because of course I can't speak on it. I'm not Latino, and I definitely don't. I'm not versed, but I just thought that her point of view was very poignant in that, because as she did point out, throughout the country, Biden did get the bulk of the Latino vote, but the bulk of the Latino vote for Trump came out of Florida. So
right. All right, Mr. Wright, is something that you and I were part of a little chat this weekend, and I want to hit on this because Elisa just said something about it, and welcome back, Miss Monica. Yeah, I do believe some of the brothers walked away because they were very upset about Joe Biden's support of the crime bill back in '94. I would be the first one to say part of the fallout from that was it locked up a generation of young black men. But I was around during that time, and I know how bad crack was, and it was also a tool to help some of these working class people take their neighborhoods back. But the thing that I get a little confused about, Mr. Wright, is why do Mr. Biden take the brunt of that when the Congressional Black Caucus was behind it, other Democrat leaders were behind it, and the Republicans they all signed the bill. Why is it hung around the neck of Mr. Biden? Why do you think, and what do you think about the whole thing with the switching of the parties for this election, sir?
Well, let's be clear. In '94, I think I was in second grade first. So I can't really speak too intelligently on it, other than the fact that at that time, from video footage that I've seen, from speeches that I've seen from that time period, it was something that he took upon himself to champion. Because what it was, my understanding, when Bill Clinton ran for election in '92, one of the things that the Democratic Party felt they had to do was present the strong, I'm tough on crime, because that's what got Reagan into office. That's what got George Bush into office. So since we know that's what George Bush ran on, I have to show that as a Democrat, I too can be tough on crime. So it was almost the fulfilling of a campaign promise to actually do something about crime. And as I think I shared with you, I was talking to one of my family members that grew up in the projects, and he talked about how hard and how tough it was in the neighborhood. And it was that crime bill that helped me get safe. So I think a part of it is that we don't fully understand the good that came out of that bill because we can see the overwhelming bad, especially when you now have states that have made legalization of marijuana, for example, legal. Is recreational use is legal, and you have white people opening dispensaries, but you still have black people incarcerated for distribution or possession. So that's a part of it. But I think it wasn't just the crime bill. I think that was the gateway drug to the disdain for Biden. It's things that he said out of his mouth, even down to if you have to think between me and Trump, then you ain't black, or to say that poor people can be as smart as white kids. Like, I understand that he stutters. I understand that he has several gaffes. So I don't think he may be the most coherent at times when he's saying this stuff, but people hear it and they respond. So I just think that ultimately for a lot of blacks, and I think you'll see that it's more so the younger blacks that sided with, because I was looking at some exit poll information with the New York Times. I think it really comes down to a fatigue of being taken for granted across the board.
Yes. Monica, Gary, I'm coming back to you. Gonna be the anchor on this one, Nico, because I know you got something to say. Monica, what do you think about the switching? Some of the Latinos and blacks are going to vote Republican in this election, and some of the white evangelicals coming to vote Democrat.
Well, I can say there's been a lot of work being done to help people more fully, or maybe for the first time, understand the systemic problems. And I've hopefully been, a beneficial part of that work. And I think so. That work is really helping white people to better connect with the struggles of people of color. And that has a lot to do with why many are leaning more Democratic now, because it's a heart issue, and seeing that we want to be good neighbors and we want to tackle these difficult things that we've ignored in the past, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. But as people are waking up to the realities of what's going on, unfortunately, a lot of people are still waking up to, things that have been a problem for a very long time. They're moving over to vote more Democratic. Now, I cannot speak to why people of color are going the other direction and switching to, more Republican votes. But I will say, my experience with conversations and seeing the comments and the behaviors of people of color in the evangelical church, the church is influencing that in a way where they're saying, well, if you don't vote this way, then you basically, we'll just go to the point of saying you just don't care about unborn children. It's very controlling. It's very aggressive. It's wrong. Should not be in the church. I went to a doctor's appointment the other day, and I had a young lady tell me, oh, well, I know who's going to win. It was a young Black woman working at a women's health doctor appointment I went to. And she said, I know who's going to win. I said, well, who do you think's going to win? First of all, let's correct that, because you don't know anything.
Right.
We don't know yet. Okay. So not in an unkind way. I said, well, who do you think is going to win? And she said, Trump. Oh, okay. So why do you think that? And she starts telling me about how she's born again. And so she cares about, she doesn't believe in abortion, this and that. And I looked at her, I said, I don't believe in abortion either. I just don't think we should legislate the way that people are trying to. I'm a pastor. I'm definitely, I'm all in with Jesus. But there are some complex issues that surround this. And by the way, I've had a couple of abortions when I was younger, and I understand some of those issues socioeconomically anyhow. And so unfortunately, what's happening in some regards, that conversation among others that I've had, is I'm seeing that people are just kind of getting shamed into it, saying, like, I saw one article, someone said something about the unborn are a convenient cause to support. Because once they're born, they're born. You don't have to do anything else. It's convenient for you to say, oh, I'm for the unborn. Well, yes, I am too. But also, there's a lot of other stuff we have to tackle once the babies are born. We have to take care of them and protect them and make sure they have equal pay, access to healthy food, and all kinds of things, that are issues that the Democratic Party tends to be a little bit better at attacking and dealing with in some of these things. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Miss Nicole, what do you think?
So my thoughts are simply this. We are when I say we, I'm talking about American people. I don't care if you're black, white, whatever. I know I'm a black woman, but I feel like I can make this generalization. All right. We are very unforgiving when it comes to something that goes against what we want, what we deem acceptable. And so I could imagine that we're in this age of cancel culture, that people are switching parties because you said or did something that went against me, went against my family, went against what I learned about it. And maybe I don't know all the facts, but I know a little bit of something. So out of my lens, I choose that, okay, Biden, you're not the ticket I want to go with, so I'm going to go with Trump, and vice versa. And so I think because we are unforgiving, we don't extend that grace to people. It's easy to write you off. It's easy to cancel that culture and say, you're done. I'm going to move to the next best thing. Because at the end of the day, we want to blame someone for something, even if you only had a small portion to contribute to it. So it's easy to say, we got these two parties, I'm going to put this blame on one party and vote the other way. But let's make no mistake about it. Nobody's perfect. All of the people that ran got issues. And just because someone chooses to side one way or the other does not mean that every single thing about them is what you're signing up for. Sometimes we got to go with the lesser of two evils.
That's right.
I wish it was a better choice. Is Jesus on the ballot? No, he wasn't on the ballot. But that's all I got.
He's king. He didn't have to run for it. He died for his office. He cannot and shall not be removed. So we thank God for that. I want to welcome Ron James and Stephanie Webster and Tammy Jackson. Y'all welcome to the audience. I hope this is entertaining and interesting. Please feel free to share your comments and join into it. So Gary Holland, thank you for jumping on, brother. And I'm not sure if you got the whole question, but, we were talking about, what we've learned from this election. And one of the points that I made is I observed that there were many African-Americans, especially the black men, who walked away from the Democrat Party and voted with Trump, even in this highly racially charged season, and also many Latinos. But on the other side, we had many white evangelicals who supported Trump very strongly in 2016, who came over and voted for Biden. Just want to know what you thought about that dynamic and what does it say to you?
Hey, how are you? Sorry, I'm late, but I'm glad to be here tonight. I tell you, just a few minutes ago, I had a tear in my eye as I saw my beautiful cousin Nikki articulating herself so well, and she always has something to say that's profound, and it's just an awesome opportunity to be on the panel with her and everyone else that's on the call. The one thing that I think I walked away from, or I'm walking away from this election with, is just a clearer understanding of the hypocrisy that people will hold so tightly to. People will say one thing and do another very frequently, and they've done it very clearly during this election. There are people that'll say their faith, or they'll say the economy, they'll say certain things, and then just vote totally the opposite way, whether they're evangelicals that say certain things about their lifestyle and their faith and vote for someone that kind of flies in the face of that, or whether it's a minority person that says something about the economy and votes against that. There's so much hypocrisy that I've seen And my prayer is that, I don't fall victim to that, or that if I do find myself in a position where I am, where my walk is in line with my talk, that I'm convicted by it and that I check myself. But that is the one thing that I think I've seen. I know there are a lot of African American men that have supported Donald Trump, and I've talked to them about it, and I want to understand their view. And I've heard what they've had to say. I may not agree, but I've heard it. I think that we all need to make sure that we're listening to one another, whether we're talking to, white people, evangelical Christians, African American men. A lot of young men like Trump's bravado and his honesty and how he just says what's on his mind, and he doesn't care who he says it to, and they're drawn toward that. But there's more to a leader than just bravado and things of that nature. So, but yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting couple of days. I haven't really watched a lot of CNN and all of that, but I have noticed a lot of hypocrisy in the hearts of a lot of people during this election cycle, and it's been something that really pushed me and drawn me toward more prayer than maybe in the past.
All right, thank you. I've made notice of a couple things, and this I want to throw out to the panel. I do know several Republicans, white and black, and for the ones who I've talked to, I know they didn't vote for Trump based on a racial thing. There are many other issues, and I think it was Mr. Wright who commented that I think it was I can't remember who the politician was that said it, but when 68 million people do something, we need to take notice of it. And this is the point I was trying to make to the table full of Democrats right after the 2016 election. If you want to win the next election, you got to find out why they voted for him. And it's easy to say racism. And racism may have played a part, but it's not the only part, right? And not just because you want somebody to be a Democrat or Republican, but because we want to have understanding, right? So this is an open question for whoever want to jump on it first. What do you think is so appealing about either the Republican Party or about Donald Trump that despite all of the open dishonesty and the very serious character flaws, that 68 million people voted for him? What do you think?
Can I go on that real quick? Oh, go ahead, Gary.
Just real quick. I mean, I asked that very question, Carl, to two friends today that are African American men that voted for him, and their response was that at least he's upfront with his position. Whether I agree with him or not, he's upfront with it. Whether if he says something that's sexist or what some may perceive to be racist or what have you, at least we know where he stands, and they appreciate that, and they've seen as individuals benefits economically to their own personal situations over the last 4 years, and they said they can look past his behavior because they see the personal benefit to them and their family. So I think that you can multiply that response over a lot of people when it comes to him.
All right, go ahead, Monica.
Yeah, just to echo that, I think it definitely has something to do with wealth. The people who obviously make decisions that benefit us, every single one of us. And so there are some who are motivated because of that. The interesting thing is, like Timothy mentioned earlier, we all have our filters. We all see things differently. And I've been studying this lately, our emotions and our constructs and how we understand the world are goal-based. Like my husband was in the military for a while. He was trained, he had a goal. So when he walked into a room, he knew how many weapons of opportunity there were, how many people, which ways to exit, the whole thing, right? So our brains train a certain way and we make decisions that are goal-based. And so what are those goals, I think, is the real question. What are we drilling down to? And I think those goals right now for a lot of people is what we're seeing is decisions being made out of fear. Not everyone, okay, but a lot, on a larger scale than normal, I think. And so it's self-preservation. And so that's going to have to do with, protect my family, protect my wealth, or try and gain some, stay a part of my community. Nicole talked about the cancel culture. People do not want to turn their backs on the thing that they feel like is the only thing they have right now, especially with COVID happening. Who wants to lose their friends and family in the middle of this? So a lot of it is just that fear, as mentioned earlier, of what happens if I really do what I feel like I'm called to do in this? What happens if I really say what I feel like I'm called to say? And so we need more people who listen, right or wrong, and none of us are going to get it 100% right. We just need people that are bold enough to say, this is where I stand, this is why, and do it in a spirit of love, because that's the answer.
Right.
Right. And we're not going to agree all in the end, but if we can be loving, and I mentioned this earlier, which is why you brought me on this call. In that post that I made, some people now trying to pull back and be like, oh, I trust God, no matter what. Well, a couple weeks ago, that's not what it looked like. You were kind of acting a little heathen. So let's be real here. You've mixed there's an alloy, okay? Your faith is not pure in God. You have mixed it with nationalism, and all of a sudden you're all in for Jesus. I mean, come on. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing, but that's what I got.
That's the thing that got my attention today. Thank you so much, Monica.
Can I? Oh,
go ahead. He's yielded to
Okay.
you.
I think that I'm sorry. I think that it's a combination of things that appeal people to Donald Trump. That appeals first is that he's not a politician. So he ran on the fact that he was not a politician. He was an everyday quote unquote Joe, but he's not. He's a rich man. He's a celebrity to some, degree. He is a pop culture figure. And then the birther issue with Obama really started taking traction. So with the 2 terms of Obama, it was like, okay, enough was enough. We can, even though most people may not have agreed, that's my hope, to all of the misogyny and xenophobia and those things that he spewed, and with racial undertones, they may not have really agreed, but they rode the train just because it was moving, and it was moving quickly. And I think people just really jumped on. He took the Republican stance, far as that party being the evangelical and the Christian party. And then you have people who are just Republicans, and they will support Republicans no matter what down the ticket, as we've seen in this presidency. You have conservatives, real conservatives, that have been very, very vocal against him when he was running, but then staunch and stand and really hunkered down in his corner when he was doing all of these things that kind of made everyone cringe. But I think the nation got behind him on those issues. Nationalism, just being a staunch Republican, it was like a quiet storm. Everything just kind of came together. And then people have a right to their own view. This is America, so you have the right to choose who you would like. But I think that's the reason why he has so much momentum.
I get it.
I think when it comes to Donald Trump, a lot of his support comes from being uninformed. And I'll confess, in 2006 or 7, this is before I really knew much about Barack Obama. I am into graphics, and I made this graphic where it was like the White House, and I had, a big Donald Trump in the background, and it said nominate in 2008, because I just knew him as a businessman. What I saw on TV. I didn't know much more than that. I think, just like was said, he wasn't a politician, and we're always complaining about how Washington is. Why not try something else? Throw something at the wall, see what sticks. But I think the greater allure of Donald Trump versus the Republican Party, because I don't think what the Republican Party has become is the true Republican Party. I think it's become a caricature of itself. But I think the Democratic Party has so become the party of everybody else but me. So since that's the case, I'm going to go where I can be somebody, because I live in the heartland of America and nobody's thinking about me and my 3 electoral votes anyway. But he thinks about me. there's all this push when it comes to, gay marriage and, don't ask, don't tell, let's repeal this and let's do that. But what about me? And I just think that is the disconnect. The Republican Party has become the party of, misfits, because I don't fit in over here. You don't really speak my language, but you speak it over here. Now, the thing about it is you can speak my language and not deliver any of it, but as long as you're talking something that I want to hear, that's good enough with me. Because even when it comes to, well, wages have gone up in the past, of Donald Trump. Yeah, because of a fake tax cut. A tax cut that every 2 years is going to step so that by the time you get to 2027, this is the law, you're going to be paying more in taxes than you paid in 2019. But he's going to be long gone, and you're not even going to remember it was him that did it. And that's the thing. It's just a whole bunch of hoodwink. And help me. I don't have my Malcolm X glasses on today. But it's a whole lot of that going on. So like I said, as long as you're talking something I want to hear, I don't really care what it is that you're doing, because I don't know where to get it, because I'm getting my information off of Twitter and Facebook anyway. So as long as you have an electorate that is uninformed, and you have an electorate that feels they're forgotten, because even when it comes to and I'm going to get off this because I don't want to commandeer this, but when it comes to the Democratic Party, so much attention this election cycle was placed on white women, not blacks, but white women. Not really Hispanics, a little bit, but white women. And they voted en masse this election more than they did last election for Donald Trump, even though it's against their interests. So I think the Democratic Party is partly to blame for why so many people want to vote for Trump, because they're not listening and they take so much for granted.
All right, I appreciate that. Okay, so this is the next question I want to ask. Let's look at the other side of it. Okay, you can have people who say, well, you guys, whoever you guys are, you voted for Mr. Biden, but you really are pro-choice. You don't like abortion. You in your heart and in your religious beliefs, you are against homosexuality. You yourself are economically conservative. Why would you vote for somebody like that? And they may feel like, why in the world would blacks vote for somebody who championed the crime bill, who locked a whole generation of your men up? So on the other side of it, for people who are asking, well, how in the world did you vote for him? You want to know why I voted for Trump, but why did you vote for Biden? And why did you vote Democrat down the whole ticket? Why do you think that happened?
Yeah, if I could chime in on that, there are a lot of people that say that, and I don't think they really want to talk about it. They just want to hear themselves ask that question because they think that they got you. You're going to be, tongue-tied. In each of the issues that you mentioned, I think Monica Gary actually posted something. I don't know if it was yesterday or the other day, but she made her heart clear. And I share a lot of her beliefs. Right, I'm pro life personally. But I love and appreciate the people that have to make decisions regarding their own body. I appreciate that. I pray for them. And I do believe people should be able to make their own choices. If it were me, my choice may be different than someone else's. But we live in a country where folks can make their own choices. God gives us free will. When it comes to the crime bill, if we hold that against Joe Biden, we have to hold that against a whole lot of politicians. And I grew up during the 80s. I'm 52. I know what it was like growing up just outside of D.C. with family in D.C. and in Maryland, and seeing people and hearing about people getting killed every day because of drugs. So when the crime bill was passed, at that time, there are a lot of people that didn't have an issue with it because it was horrible across many major cities. Now, looking back through the lens of history, we see how horrible it was and how many lives and people's lives were destroyed. But during the time, I don't think there are too many people that objected to it because we weren't able to see in the future. So each of the things you mentioned, Carl, I think there's always another narrative to them. But on the surface, people will quickly ask those questions and point their finger at you and say, I got you. but there's typically more to an answer than just that surface story. Even economics, yes, I'm a probably financially conservative person, but I'm also socially, liberal. I think most people may want to have smaller government. They may want to have more business opportunities, economic development opportunities. But most people, a lot of people, want to see people that are underserved, that are struggling, have more help, from the government. So it's never black and white. I always say it's shades of gray. And when people ask questions in a way that tries to paint things as black or white, I think they're being disingenuous and not really wanting to have a discussion.
Got it. Go ahead, Nicole.
I like to add on to that by saying that, no matter what our views are, no one's ever one size fits all, right? No, don't come for me about my salvation. You know what I mean? Like, you can't judge me, I can't judge you. And so when some people had an appeal for Trump and others chose to go Biden, right? I know it was mentioned just a moment ago that people knew what they were getting with Trump, and they decided, hey, he's not so political, so let's go that route. In the same manner that people saw and knew what they were getting, they decided, I don't want that, right? And so we've had this reality TV show for 4 years, and so we saw more than we've ever saw, right? When it comes to crass comments and poor behavior, social media, that whole entertainment piece with Twitter and so much. We saw so much carrying on that you could just get tired of it and say, I'm choosing a different way because I want to see something different. It has nothing to do, it may not be all inclusive of pro-life or any of those things. It could just be, I'm tired of the way we've been going these last 4 years. I'm tired of what I've seen and what I now know, because thank you for not wearing a mask. Thank you for not pretending. Thank you for bearing all, being transparent, because then I got to see you for who you are and make an informed decision this time around. And so I think that's my 2 cents.
I appreciate it. It was worth a whole quarter to me. Go ahead, Monica.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. That's like a whole $20.
That's right.
Okay. On this, oh man, I love these conversations. There's so many directions we could go. You do this so well. Gary's correct. I did post a thing the other day, which I was pulling up just as he was mentioning that, because it's important for me to make very clear why I lean a certain way, and what it has to do with my faith, because I'm a Christian. All my decisions need to be through that filter. And if they're not, I need to question that relationship I have with the Lord. And so for me, I posted an image the other day, and it said vote, and it had the rainbow colors in the first in the V, and then the fist for Black Lives Matter in the O, and then it was like it's funny describing this. I wish I could just pull it up, but there's like a uterus in the T. And then on the last one in the E, it was like a chain link fence over top of the American flag with a little hand coming up. So we're talking about immigrants and the children that are not being cared for well. And in all of that, I say, I believe one thing, and it may not be exactly what is happening in all of these circumstances, but I believe in approaching all of those things in a Christ-like way. And so that means that if you live a homosexual lifestyle, or you're trans, or what have you, I love that meme somebody put up, and it said, if you don't believe in gay marriage, just make sure you say no when somebody asks you. Right? So I don't have to get married to someone. I'm married to a man. I love him very much. You know what I mean? So what you do is not my business. Like my mother, that's what she decided, how she was going to live her life. And she told me, I said, okay, like, I love you. You're a big girl. You can make your decisions, and we love Janice, the woman she was with, very much. My mother has passed, and Janice is like family, but that's the thing. Like, it doesn't have to be just because I believe one thing, I try and make everyone else do what I believe. That's not even Christianity. That's not even Jesus's way. Maybe that's American Christianity. I mean, it is now, but that's not Jesus's way. That's not his heart for people. He loves us where we are, and he teaches us, a better way and how to walk more fully with him. in this world by loving people. And so for me, that looks very different than other people who want to impose their beliefs on the rest of the world so they can make it more comfortable for themselves, because I don't believe in that. That is not Christianity. That is not holy. I'm not going to preach. I'm done.
No, we thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anybody else got an opinion on that? Well, I do want to say I thank God for all of the comments with Heather and Ron. I did get somebody to give me an angry face, and I don't want to call their name because they may not want to be called out. But if you don't mind, if something that we said made you angry, I love to talk about it. The moniker for Carlsconversations is a safe place to have difficult conversations. One of the many reasons why I do this is because I believe that in all thy getting, get an understanding. Okay, Gabriel, I knew who it was, but I don't want to call you out. But if you don't mind explaining why you were angry, we love to talk about it. I think that in all thy getting, get an understanding. I love that portion of the scripture. I love everything that it means. One day I'm a preacher. Not Sunday though, but one day I'm a preacher. Because I think that a lot of times we get angry with people, we fall out with people, we have jacked up relationships because we avoid the difficult conversation. And I tell everybody, and you can ask any of these panelists, I do not prep my panel. The only thing they know before we go live is the general topic. And anybody has been on with me will tell you that. So, and the reason why I do that, not trying to set anybody up, because if you've seen the way I work, I don't do that. But I want to have an organic conversation. I don't want it to be canned. You know what I mean? Now, an interview, a one-on-one interview is a little different. But, Gabriel said, I'm not angry, but I did not agree with what was being said. Okay, cool. And that's awesome. And if you want to chime in on the part that you didn't agree with, if you want to, sure, but don't feel pressure to do it. Like I said, Carlsconversations is a safe place to have difficult conversations. And I think disagreement is good, too, because sometimes through a disagreement, we can get understanding. Yes, sir, Mr. Wright.
I just wanted to say something very quickly as far as why I would vote. I think, as I said in the beginning, you really have to step outside of yourself and figure what can be of the greatest benefit to the most people apart from yourself. Like when you see the coronavirus, we're now, logging new record upon new record upon new record each day that passes. I can't just be concerned with my personal views. Now, when it comes to my spiritual views, even if I were to take or seek political office, it's not my job to proselytize. And that was one thing that I was sharing with someone today. I've read through the Bible for the first time this year, and I'm about to finish it again, hopefully in less than 45 days, because I'm really trying to understand it. But one thing that came to me over the past week in the New Testament, Jesus never tried to convince anybody to follow him. He was like, this is what it is. Either you can or you won't. And I think that's really when it comes to my personal convictions. Am I for this or am I for that? Maybe, maybe not. But at the end of the day, I just feel as much as you try to protect one side of it, there has to be balance and protect the other side. So versus saying the weaknesses in the party or the weaknesses of a platform or whatever, seek an opportunity where you can still hear or let your voice be heard when it comes to an issue. Like, that's really what it comes down to. But to just think that a rubber stamp, because this party says so, is going to suit all your needs and the needs of everybody else is unrealistic. More perfect union, but not a perfect union. More perfect.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. I wish that more people would be like me in this way. I don't join the parties because I don't want to drink the Kool-Aid. I want to be an independent thinker, an independent voter, and to be able to approach a problem or a situation from a position not tilted to the left or to the right or to the Dems or to the Republicans. And I think for all of those who are frustrated with feeling like your party took you for granted, I wouldn't say go to the other party. I would say pull out of all the parties, because That way, if they know how many independent people there are, you know what they're going to do? They're going to work very hard to get your vote. When you're part of the party, and even going further than just voters, I think the two-party system makes crooks out of honest men and women when you get to Washington. Because when you get to Washington, and I'm talking about at the national level, it becomes less about the people who elected me for me to come here and represent them. And it's more about, listen, the party leadership say we're going to do this. And if you don't rock this way, you'll never get any of your bills passed. And we know that happens. And I think that's a sad, sad thing because if you got a leader in your party that's from Lincoln, Nebraska, and here it is, you from Stafford, Virginia, that person from Lincoln, Nebraska will not be telling you how you got to vote because they didn't put you there. The people from your district put you there. The people from your state put you there. And yes, you got to represent those interests. You got to represent a national interest also now. But you got to go report to them folks that put you there. So I think it's something that we ought to consider. I don't think I'm going to join the black party that Puffy started. I think I'm going to stay where I am right now. And that's no diss, hey Puff, hey homie, there's no diss, man. I'm just saying, I'm going to stay independent. I'm just saying. So before we move on, did anybody else have a comment about that particular deal? Okay, cool. Now, this is what I want to talk about. Okay, we know that we're dealing with a tight race in North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. You also had very close votes in Michigan and Wisconsin. Well, not so close after they finished counting. But there's a narrative that is going on that they're cheating. I have heard election officials from Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada in particular make this statement that, listen, the reason why it's taking so long is because a couple things. You have more people who participated in this vote than ever before. So you got sheer volume. And then we're dealing with the mail-in ballots, huge volume. I don't think any of these districts have ever seen that amount of mail-in ballots. And there are safeties built into the system so that you won't have fraud, right? And part of those safeties is, hey, listen, if you showed up on election day, that's why some of the states, they count the mail-in ballots last so they can get a roster of all the people who showed up to vote. So if you sitting in also a mail-in vote, they'll catch that. So they're saying, listen, we're not trying to go fast. We want to get it right. And I know some people feel embarrassed, like, you know, we're supposed to be the greatest country in the world. Look how long it takes for us to count this stuff. I'm going to tell you the truth. I wouldn't care if it take them another week as long as they get it right. My prayer has been that every fraud, every crime, every plot to do what's wrong, I want it to be exposed. And I don't care whether it's a Democrat or Republican. If you're cheating, I hope you get caught and I hope your butt get locked up. Anyway, so where do you guys think we are in that? Do you believe that there is fraud going on? Or do you believe that, hey, this is the way it goes? The election went this way and it's taking time to count these ballots. What do you think? Nicole, go ahead.
I don't think there's fraud. One thing I will say that we can say a positive thing that has come out of the current administration being in place is that because of the last 4 years, more importantly, the last 9-10 months due to COVID, more people decided to vote. So that is a positive. Whether people want to agree or not, whether they want to give him credit or not, we have to acknowledge that where we are in 2020 has opened the eyes of a lot of people. We may not always agree, but more people woke up long enough to get to the polls early, to mail in that ballot. And now we need to make sure that every last one of those are counted. And I agree to what you said, Carl, that doesn't matter how long it takes. Let's do it and let's get it right. And in the process of doing that, let's expose those deficiencies. Let's expose those things that are negligent. Let's expose the fraud. But what I don't think is right is that just because you may feel like you're not winning, that we turn into a pouty child and start saying that somebody's cheating. But let's let the process roll out and then come to the expected end. And I think people were premature in thinking it was going to go one way versus the other. And now we're dealing with, oh, wait a minute, y'all cheating. No, more people woke up and said, I want at least my voice to be heard.
If I could add to that too, Nicole, I do think that I agree. It take as long as you need to make sure that we get it right. But one thing that I think I've come to understand and appreciate is that the system we have, with a lot of the control of voting being distributed to the states and the local levels, is absolutely the right way. Right? Can you imagine if there was a federally controlled electoral system, and to the point that you had, a president or the Senate with the power to control how votes were counted and tallied and deadlines and all of that. The fact that in this country it's distributed across the states, I've really come to appreciate that during this electoral process. And I think that as long as that's the case, it eliminates or significantly minimizes the ability of a national party or leader to really manipulate, the outcome, unless they do something with technology. But I do appreciate what's going on now. And every vote should be counted. Now, if something happens overnight and President Trump starts taking the lead in Pennsylvania and Georgia and all of that, everybody that's saying let every vote count needs to keep saying let every vote count. If for some reason he takes the lead, which I don't think will happen. But if we're going to say let the votes be counted, let's let them be counted, and wherever the chips fall, they should fall. Personally, I like how it's going, and I hope it goes that way. But that's just my personal opinion. But I do like how things are distributed in our country, and I appreciate the fact that nationally the system isn't controlled, because we would have a problem if that were the case.
Yeah, just me personally. I like the way that things are being handled as well. I think everything should be done in decency and in order, and I would agree that every vote should count. One of the things that I really hope and pray for is that whatever it turns out to be, that we have a leader. Um, regardless to your differences of opinion, be it Democrat, Republican, that you can reach across the table and do what is best for the nation, regardless to whoever looks like, do what is best. And then, because of the things that I have seen from the current administration, not necessarily make amendments, but I think this is the first time that we've had so many firsts with the current administration. When it was set up back in the day by Washington, I don't think that he was looking at it from this perspective to say this can potentially go wrong, or a person, there's so many loopholes. And when you have a certain type of personality, they look for loopholes and how to circumvent this, to do this and to do that. So what my desire is to always do what is right and to be fair and to be just. And if you're going to have someone to come in to be the commander in chief, is that they are a tried and true leader. Of course, you may not know everything and no one is perfect, but to do things the right way. And it should not be just about oneself. It should be for all, as it said, under one nation. That's just my little thought.
All right.
I I do think that counting every single vote is important. I think that everyone voted for the reason for their vote to be counted. I think the slow process was expected. We've been hearing for weeks that it's going to take a long time because of mail-in voting. We've never been in a pandemic before, at least not in my lifetime. And we are seeing people who were not going to stand in line and vote. So the process, I believe, is working. It's just that it's new to us. This is unprecedented times. We've never even, 2020 is so much for us that we've never even been in anything like this. So, of course, the election was going to be unprecedented as well, because we haven't lived through a pandemic. We have been on lockdown. You have people that are really, really at risk, but they are staunch voters. Then, let the process play out. I don't agree with 2 hours or 3 hours into the election, we call it fraud when the votes haven't even been counted yet. I mean, it's your right as a candidate and an incumbent to challenge the vote. You have that right when it comes between the 1%, but let it get there first. Let the votes, be counted, and then you can handle this in court. But we're in court in one state saying stop the count, and in another state saying continue to count. So it gives you the mindset of Mr. Trump. And me being a New Yorker, I'm not new to him. I've known him and who he is and his family and his dad and the way that they conduct themselves. And it is so the way that they conduct themselves. It's not a shock, right? Because anything that goes not his way, it's wrong. The federal judges who didn't agree with him for Trump University, they had it in for him. So we can go down a whole long list. But what I'm saying is, in a democracy, right? We talk about who wants to vote this way, but that's the good thing about a democracy. You have that right to vote whoever and the way you want to. So let democracy play out. Count the votes. You can hem this thing up, which he's going to do in court, but let's see where you stand at the end of it. It's unprecedented. People, just like Nicole said, people are voting. They're voting their issues. We haven't seen anything like him or this or the pandemic. We are living in a time of, you know, it feels like Twilight Zone sometimes, because sometimes you have to ask yourself, did I just see this or did I just hear this? Let me pray. I don't want to respond, so we're living in those type of issues. So we have to give these states the opportunity to let these people who are volunteers, let's let the people who are doing the hard work volunteering their time to see democracy through. And then you can go to court, Supreme Court, and we all can hash it out there. But I think that we should let all the votes be counted first.
All right, before we go to our next person, I want to address this thing by Gabriel James. What if there's actually proof of breaking laws during this election? Well, I'm gonna let the panel handle this too. Well, Gabriel, I tell you, I love what Alyssa just said, and I think that we all agree here. No matter how we may have voted or may not have voted, this is a panel of honest people. I think for me, my issue right now with the sitting president is you're the leader of our nation. You're the leader of the free world. I think it is a little uncouth and very unpresidential to come and make these type of accusations without bringing some proof. Certainly, if you have proof that there has been cheating, that is very serious. That tears the foundations of our democracy. I don't want to see that. There is no candidate that I want. I'm coming to you, Brother Wright. There is no candidate that I want to see win so bad that I'm willing to tolerate cheating. So if there is proof, I would like to see the proof go before the court, not just a court of public opinion. And I would like to see it taken care of legally. I would like to see those people who have done it held to the fullest extent of the law to accountability. But as of now, there are even members of his own party that are saying we just don't see it. We've heard him say this, but we don't see it. So I'm gonna tell you, and I'll let everybody speak for themselves. If it comes to light that there has been actual breaking of the law, I would love to see them brought to accountability to the fullest extent of the law. Mr. Wright.
Malcolm X said something along the lines, granted it was not the best time to say it, but like chickens coming home to roost didn't make me sad, it made me glad. And my thing is, you can't have it both ways. Now, if you're talking about laws being broken or cheating going on, let's first talk about why you're in this predicament. You were the one that said, don't vote by mail, even though you are a person that has voted by mail every year. Now they're counting mail-in ballots, and you told your base not to vote by mail. So that was something that you spoke into existence and you got. The second thing, let's go back to the early voting when people were able to turn in ballots. And you had governors that were creating all kinds of blockades and barriers for people to even be able to submit their ballot early. Like in Texas, you have the governor of Texas. I think it's the county where Houston is, like a population center of like 2 million. You're going to have one ballot box for the entire county to turn in a ballot. And let's also talk about who you brought in to be over the Postal Service. Somebody that's in direct competition with the Postal Service. Cuts budgets. So you don't have enough funds to have people to actually handle what you already knew was going to be a tsunami of ballots. So my thing is, you can't talk about something being unfair when it only suits you. And that's where the conversation has to come. I'm not saying that only Democrats mailed in ballots. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the provision to actually be able to handle the influx of votes is not there. But overwhelmingly, it was proven that more Republicans showed up the date of to vote, election day, opposed to mailing in ballots because that's what they were told not to do. Whether that be the case or not, at the end of the day, if you're going to say count votes here, they need to be counted over there too. But last thing, don't be disrespectful to the people that you want to lead. If you're going to trash Detroit, if you're going to trash the people of Philadelphia, if you're going to trash this governor and trash that, Secretary of State, then why do you want to be over these people if they're trash? Just so you can be in charge? So at the end of the day, when you have a Republican governor that's overseeing it, because just like Carl said, he has to answer to his state. So you better believe he wants to make sure that the vote is honest and fair and straight up. That's why he's there. But I can't just say that it's not fair because I didn't win. And I'll stop.
We'll come back to you. Monica, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm listening to this, and there's so many valid points and important things to consider. So thank you for Timothy for breaking some of that down. But let's talk for a second, like basic psychology and like the human problem of sin, which I think most of us are in agreement that that's a thing. So here's the thing. I don't think any of us should assert at any point that no one on either side is going to attempt fraud. People are trying, people are desperate, people are afraid, and that's on both sides of this. If anything, because of the allegations of the Democratic Party committing fraud or being prone to commit, this was the estimate before anything ever started happening, right? So there's more eyes on them. If anything, they're less likely to try and commit fraud. If anything, they are less likely. Let's watch the people crying wolf, okay? Like when you're in a relationship and like someone's cheating, they'd be like, oh, you're cheating on me, oh, you're cheating on me, and they're the one cheating. I feel like we kind of need to look at that. You know what I mean? Like there's a basic psychology behind this. Something is wrong, okay? Now let's realistically, we're talking about millions of people, and many of them are desperate, and many of them are afraid on both sides of this. People are going to do stupid things. I'm just saying that if you call out ahead of time and say, those are the people going to be doing something wrong, they're less likely to do it because they know that there's more eyes on them. So just some food for thought on that. But okay. I do believe in the end that we have an efficient system to sort through this. Let everything be counted. Let it be done rightly. And we all want, I think at least us here, we want this done honestly. And I think it will be.
Okay, I would just like to jump in real quick. I would agree with everybody that things should be done, again, decent and in order. If there are any accounts of fraud, I think they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent. But this is my little 2 cents on this, and then I'll pass the mic to someone else. To me, the commander-in-chief has the type of personality that will throw a lot of things to the wall to see what it is that sticks. Before we even got to the election, I'm going to say a few months out, it was if I don't get this, it's rigged. We're turning around the curve. It's rigged. The many things. My thing is this: everybody, it is their civil duty to to vote. Excuse me, I said it right. To vote. From there, all of the ballots should be counted. I don't care if it be email, snail mail, your mail, my mail. Everyone vote should be accounted for. It should be done correctly. We should not be in the middle of having temper tantrums or fits to say, okay, we got to stop now. We also need to account that there has been a pandemic, and that should be taken into consideration. And then last but not least, why is it that when it comes that the vote is suppressed? Everyone should have the right to vote. And if you say, I'm just paraphrasing from what I've heard on the TV, every vote counts. But when you happen to look like me, or if I happen to be a Democrat, or if I am independent and someone that looks like me, you want to stifle me to say that my vote, for whatever reason, shouldn't be accounted for. And I think that is wrong. Regardless of what you look like, be it Democrat or Republican, everyone's vote should count. There should be no suppression. And to me, there has been a lot of suppression, along with the theories of this, that, the other. If it doesn't go this way, it's rigged. And when you do what it is that you're supposed to be doing, and when you do it the right way, decent and in order, you don't have to play these types of games of shenanigans. Let the chips fall where they may and be a big boy and deal with everything accordingly. That's just my thought.
Go ahead, Gary.
Hey, Carl, if I could just real quick regarding the kind of illegality or potential illegality of what's going on now. Months and months ago, I remember reading an opinion piece when when President Trump started saying that mail-in ballots shouldn't be counted and all of that sort of thing. And I read an opinion piece, and it was in Fox News by someone. I can't remember what it is. I'll try to find it and post it to this recording. But someone said that the one type of vote that's hard to make fraudulent are the mail-in ballots, when people are manually counting ballots. And the person that wrote the article was saying that President Trump is trying to limit mail-in balloting because those are the ones that can't be manipulated. In 2016, there was a lot of talk about Russians and about bots and about the electronic systems being hacked and manipulated and things of that nature. But with the mail-in ballots, it's harder to break into the system and to manipulate this system. So there were many people saying that he was getting out early, trying to lay doubts against this process because he knew that if it came down to it and votes were actually counted, that it could adversely affect his chances to win. So when you think about the illegality of it, I think that he's proving that we can count on this system being fairly accurate just by his actions many months ago to cast doubt against this manual counting process. So I think it's legit, and we'll just have to live with the results.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
Can I just say one
yeah.
thing? Because
One thing.
I
Go ahead.
know that people are saying that there is proof. Let me just say this. The proof, if it's the Pennsylvania proof, and I'm not sure which one that we're speaking of, there were people from both parties in that room. What Trump won in Pennsylvania was for the Republicans to move up within 6 feet. Okay. So that it wasn't that people were not in the room. People are in the room from both parties. What he was granted in Pennsylvania was the right for the Republican overseer to move up to 6 feet, within 6 feet of counting the ballots because of the mandate of separation. So that is what he won. And I just want to say one other thing that's just coming in, that he is now upset with his legal team. So he's mad with the legal team at this very moment, because you can't stop the democratic process. You just cannot. I don't care how many lawyers you have, the democratic process has to go through. And right now, he's angry at his legal team at this very moment. That's the latest tweet from the President of the United States, is that his legal team is making him unhappy.
Wow. One thing I want to say real quick, and Monica, I'm gonna come right back to you. I want to make this clear, especially to our viewer Gabriel. I'm not an anti-Republican. I'm not an anti-Democrat. I will tell you that for me, I smelled Donald Trump coming. I couldn't vote for him in 2016. I couldn't vote for Hillary either. And I definitely couldn't vote for him in 2020. I have my own reasons for that. Not because I hate him or anything like that. I smelled some character flaws that I don't want to see in the American president. Now, that's the world according to Carl. I think it was very irresponsible for a president to start talking months out about how he distrusted mail ballots. That's a preference. The United States president does not control voting. Voting is controlled state by state. There was a lot of time for him to behave very presidential and try to work towards fixing the flaws in our voting system. But causing panic and chaos and getting people who already don't trust the government to get them hyped up on thinking there's going to be some great conspiracy to defraud the government by cheating through mail-in ballots was irresponsible at best. And I'm being nice. It was very irresponsible. You don't like mail-in ballots? That's your problem, sir. It is a legal way to vote. And even though he does not think, and there are millions of Americans don't think that this pandemic is real, I work in healthcare. I'm a volunteer chaplain. I know how many body bags my hospital is using. Okay? I see the worst patients. So don't tell me COVID is not real and we're not turning the corner. It is factually incorrect. Now, I can't tell nobody what to think for themselves, but I can tell you it is factually incorrect. So, we had to do something to accommodate people to make voting access open. Now, let me say something. I want to be very clear. I am down 1,000% for voter access. I'm not down with voter suppression at all. I'm also not down with cheating. I don't see anything wrong with proving who you are before you get a ballot, whether it be showing your ID in person or to be able to have a way to prove who you are if you're going to vote by way of mail. I don't have a problem. I don't care who agree or disagree. This is my opinion, right? I want voting to be open. I want it to also be honest. We have from now until the next election cycle for each state to improve their process, even if we're going to get a commission together and go look at things at a national level. But for the leader of the nation to come out and start talking this stuff, to me, you throwing salt in the game, and that is not a responsible thing for a leader to do. You made the country look bad, sir. And now you're either talking out of ignorance or you're talking out of a criminal mindset. You're going to go and claim victory when you know that in most states that the mail-in ballots are counted last. No, not last, because provisional ballots counted last, but the mail-in ballots are counted after the election day voters. He knew that there was going to be a red wave on election day because he was telling his people, don't mail them in, even though there were many Republicans who mailed them in because they got good sense for those who didn't want to go to the polls. So you knew that the election day ballot was going to be counted first. You knew there were millions upon millions of mail-in ballots that were not counted, and you're going to go claim yourself the victor because you were ahead in many of the polls? It is either dishonest or it's ignorant. Either way, they are not characteristics that I want to see in my president. And I wouldn't care if he was a Republican, a Democrat, straight, gay, male, female, Asian, Latino, black. I don't care what he or she or it was. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And now I'll pull up for comments.
Okay, so on that, let me finish that. Um, you said ignorance or criminal mindset. I dare say it's both. Because, in my humble personal opinion, I don't think he was aware of a lot of policies in regards to being a commander in chief. I think it's different when someone serves in a capacity where you start out being maybe the mayor on the board of supervisors and serving in some capacity. He went from being the guy on TV, a whole lot of reality shows and other ventures that did not work out so well, to going to a show and saying you're fired, you're fired, you're fired. And he tried that same process in governing the 50 states, which is totally unacceptable. Now, that's just my little 2 cents worth. I think he didn't know a lot of things. And unfortunately, he doesn't listen to his cabinet and take the advice for someone trying to guide him gently to say it may not go the way that you think, or vice, along those lines. He doesn't have good character, in my opinion, and I'll just leave it there.
Hey, Nikki, I'm going to address this comment real quick, then I'm coming right back to you. Gabriel James wrote, you mentioned integrity before. My biggest concern is that that means if it is found that they are cheating, what that means about this country. God is about fair and just. Gabriel, I agree with you 100%. And let me tell you something. I think that there's always a chance for cheating because there are some people who are just dishonest. But I don't believe that dishonesty shows up in one party more than the other. Dishonesty is a moral character problem. And sure, there could have been cheating on this election and every other election in small pockets. I do not believe, and I have not seen where there's cheating and on a large scale, a conspiracy to cheat Mr. Trump out of the election. And I'm going to go back to something he said again. When you go make a public statement that the only way they can win is if they cheat, then you have taken away the ability for the American public to cast their vote. Maybe the American public don't want you. Just like they voted you in, sir, they can vote you out. And so to me, you put salt in the game when you make a statement like that. Of course, there's a way to beat you. It's called somebody has more votes than you. Okay.
A lot of votes.
All of the folks that I voted for didn't win. I got to rock with that. But I think that's very poor
taste,
very unprofessional, very unpresidential for the leader of the nation to speak like that. And that's my 2 cents, Gabriel. Go ahead, Nick.
I just was going to comment. I think, and I know everybody may not be a Christian, but I am. I rep Jesus all day. However, we have to be careful not to over spiritualize everything. Just because a vote's not going a certain way does not now mean that there is something, illegitimate going on. There doesn't mean that there's cheating and stuff. Now, as the panel has mentioned already, if cheating is going on, no matter what party it is, let's get to the bottom of that. But let's not over spiritualize and think that, because he's not winning, there has to be something going on, and we have to make no. At the end of the day, let the process roll out. Like everybody mentioned earlier, if there is something that is not fair, if there is something that proves cheating, let's make sure we deal with that. I don't care what part, because I don't want anyone in the White House, right, who is dishonest. But the reality is, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Nobody's perfect, but we need to make sure that if there is something that's going wrong, we get it addressed. And so that's all I have to say.
All right, Monica, go ahead.
I want to just say as well that I did not and could not vote for him in 2016, and neither did I vote for Hillary. I remember when I woke up the next morning and I went, what is going on? It felt like I was in a game show. And I couldn't believe that he got elected because I saw from afar, and having that discernment, there was something very wrong. And to me, what it looked like was narcissistic personality disorder. I am not a doctor. I don't know him personally, but I will tell you there are common traits. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm completely serious. There are common traits that you can see in people who have specific disorders. Okay, it's just like if you take a drug, you exhibit certain behaviors. Okay, there are things that you can see. So I'm not diagnosing, but I could see something very wrong, and it looked like that to me. And that is not the kind of person that I would want in the White House. I personally believe he may be mentally ill. I hope that he gets some help. I think that that's why we're seeing a lot of people who deal with mental illness supporting and rallying around him. And Gabriel, I know I really want to talk with you, brother, but we're going to have to just slow down a little bit because you got so much to say. I bet we should talk offline because I love you and your wife. But let's stay on this for a second. The character is beyond questionable. Okay, after everything that we've seen, there are tactics that are employed specifically by him to garner support beyond what is acceptable. It's cult-like in some ways. This is a problem. Oh, I was talking to you. I was sorry. I got y'all's names mixed up. Yeah, we met. I mean, I love you and your husband. I'm sorry. Anyway. Oops.
It's all good.
All right. Well, you can't see me. Blushing, I'm turning red. Faux pas, right? Anyways, there's a lot going on, and we can talk about voter fraud, allegations of that all day. We could talk about character all day, but when it comes down to it, I think the important thing to pay attention to is, just like Nicole said, we're all flawed. We've all fallen short. And I think that in this situation, we need to just let it play out. But we need to understand that there are more good people on one side than the other, right? There's Christians. We're all believers, I think, in this conversation, on both sides of this, right? And so it's causing so much division. And what we have to do is find a way to love one another through this. I love y'all so much. To love one another through this, and it takes, not just talking about the issues and the things that we're afraid of, but like what's underneath of that? Why are we afraid? Aw, thank you. Why are we afraid? What are we really afraid of? Should we be afraid? We should fear the Lord and then nothing else. Because we say, in his presence, we have a fear, a holy fear. And he says, fear not. So if we are making decisions in fear, if we're acting out of fear, then we need to question where is our heart? Where is our faith really? So I don't know. That's just what it comes back to for me. Yes. Amen. The way back is Christ. Yes.
Hey, Ron, thank you for saying that. And you're right. This was not meant to be a Trump bashing session, and I apologize if it has seemed that way. That's not the purpose, and I have never had a show to come and bash Trump. Sorry you feel that way, but I tell you what, brother, you are more than welcome to be on the next episode of Carl's Conversation, which is going to be Sunday evening at 6 p.m. And I will welcome you and Gabriel to come and say whatever it is that you want to say, because I'm fair. And I thank you for being a part of the audience. Really, I really do. And I hope I don't sound sarcastic, because I'm not trying to be. I'm not. But listen, we're at the hour and 30-minute mark. I just realized that. I looked at the clock. I said, oh, God. So I respect your time. So what I'm going to do is, before we close out, I just want to give the mic to every person to have, so you can have closing comments before we wrap this up. We'll start with Nicole, then we'll go to Timothy, then Elisa, then Monica, then Gary for final comments. Go ahead, Nicole.
Just kind of going back to what did we learn from America. One thing I had posted earlier this week was just saying how God is able to speak to us through anyone. And we can't be so caught up by our blinders, those scales on our eyes, our own offense, our own prejudice, that we miss those important messages. And so, one thing I'll say relative to what's happening in this climate is no matter what the outcome is, no matter if we end up with Trump, no matter if we end up with Biden, no matter what happens, if we open our ears to hear, open our eyes to see, we can learn something from every situation. And we need to learn to, again, open our eyes, open our ears, and put aside those prejudices. That's going to take work. But I believe that that's the only way we can come to a place of peace and healing, no matter who the president is.
Thank you, Brother Wright.
I really enjoyed the discussion tonight. I would just say Jesus wasn't a Republican. Jesus was not a Democrat. His party was the kingdom. His planks was the will of God, you know? And I think that if we're going to approach something from a spiritual aspect, we need to make sure that that's the main thing. Like, don't think that Jesus is about any of this. He's above it all, to be quite honest. And I would just say that when you're making your decision on what you want to believe, source your own information, but make sure it comes from reputable sources. Because if you're just going off of what somebody told you, you're a sitting duck in the sport to every wind. So just approach things from real information, real facts, maybe not even CNN, maybe C-SPAN, and just be informed. But Jesus was not a Republican. He wasn't a
Amen
Democrat.
to that. Alyssa, thank you, sir.
I think that what I would say is, at first, let me say thank you to the Armstrongs for having me, and thank you, panel. It was a pleasure being on with you guys and the audience. But I just really wish that we, as Americans, can live up to the ideals of America. People come here for freedom. People come to this country to worship who they want, have freedom of religion, have freedom of speech. So I just wish moving forward, no matter who's president, that we all work to live up to the ideals of we the people, and the freedoms and liberty and justice for all. I just hope that we take this two-party system out of play. I really hope that we start to free think and just understand that all the millions of Americans, we're all not going to think the same, but we should strive for the greater good of everyone if we are going to live up to the ideals that this country was founded on. I mean, and that's just my hope moving forward. That's my hope for this country moving forward. It's just that we come together with our differences, because that's what America is. It's the land of the free. You're here to be different. We're not here to be in a box. And whether it's a religious box, whether it is sexual orientation or economic status, we should be free to move about this country and live in the ideals that it was founded on. So that's my hope moving forward.
Oh my goodness, this has been an interesting, fun conversation. Carl, thank you for doing this. I think we're just developing a real good community around what you're doing here, and I appreciate it so much. And that you've asked me back so often. I'm so blessed to be a part of this. I would like to say in closing, really just to bring it back, because we are people of faith here. And because there's truth in this, even if someone is listening who is not. Short story, super short. I went to the polls the other day, and I went to support a friend who was handing out sample ballots. And just the Lord put on my heart to just go be there with her. And so I went to stand with her, and we were talking. Some people from the opposite party, were nearby, and we started to talk with them. And before you know it, we're talking about our children and our families. And then those women switch out, and another man comes to take their place. And now we have to kind of break the ice again. I like to do that. So I'm standing between them, but with her. And I look over, and he has a bandage on his finger. And I said, what happened to your finger? So he tells me, what's going on. You might have to have surgery, this and that. And I said, oh, can I pray for you? And he said, okay, like that's not what he expected. I said, can I put my hand on you? Obviously, we're in COVID, and I had to ask. I put my hand on his back because I like to put hands on people when I pray, if that's appropriate. And he said yes, and I prayed for him. And now my friend is praying for him as well. Okay, and this is happening at the polls where the sample ballots are being handed out in front as people go in and out. And we're both praying for him. And he looks at me afterwards, and he just taken back in a good way and is like, thank you. No, really, thank you. Like just something, God was just moving in that, and the Spirit was moving in that. And not what I expected to happen that day, or him or her. And then I'll tell you what, this other lady comes into the boat. She's got a brace on her foot. And on her way out, I said, hey, what happened to your ankle? I love to pray for people as much as I can. So I look for those little things. So what happened to your ankle? She starts telling me, and her English is a little broken. But we're listening carefully to decipher what's going on. And she tells us about some surgery she might have to have, and it may be fractured. She's going to get her x-ray. I said, I guess we're just doing this today. Can I pray for you? And she said, okay. And so I started to pray for her. Now I'm praying for her. This gentleman over here on the opposite side is praying for her. My friend is praying for her. And God just did something that we miss these things. We miss these beautiful things when we say, oh, well, you follow this and I follow this, or you look like this and I look like this, and there's these divisions. And to wrap it up, like I said, I've been studying like brain function, how we, develop concepts, emotional concepts, things like that, constructs. And what was pointed out in this book that I was reading is very interesting. They're talking about a rainbow. And when you look at a rainbow, you see such and such number of colors. You know why? Because you put a definition to that color. And so you see lines. There are no lines. It's all one spectrum of continuous light changing from one color to another. And there are variances in between that. And tyranny is the removal of nuance. Mm-hmm. Paul Scanlon said that, a wonderful coach. Tyranny is the removal of nuance. And I love what you're doing because it brings back the nuance. We can have these conversations. We can say, you know what, across party lines, we can pray. We can still love each other. We can break these walls down by saying that not on our watch. We're going to connect. We're going to talk about the hard things. So that's all I got.
Hey, man. Thank you, sister. Mr. Gary.
Hey, what hasn't been said already? This has been a really cool conversation tonight. I know I've enjoyed it, even though I came in a little late. But one thing I can say about 2020, somebody mentioned it earlier. I've seen the opportunity for the formation of so many communities of people during 2020. Believers, non-believers, people focused on inclusion based on sexual orientation, political ideology, people reaching out across religious denominations and working together for the betterment of their communities. I've seen so much opportunity in the midst of all of the craziness of this year, including this election cycle that seems to have taken forever, right? And COVID and all the economic problems we've had across the country. And I just want to encourage anybody that's still on to, whether you like who's the president on January 20th or not, we still have a lot of work to do as just members and citizens of the United States. So I encourage everybody listening to roll up your sleeves, find ways to communicate with people that you hadn't communicated with in the past, work together. There are a lot of folks that are going to need consoling and encouragement after the election is finally done. But at the end of the day, whoever sits behind that desk in the Oval Office, we're still going to be here in our communities, in our cities, in our counties, and we still need to work. We still need to work at our local level to make sure that we make things as good as we can where we live. and we shouldn't lose sight of that. Sometimes we can focus so much on the presidency, we forget about the work that we can do right in our own neighborhoods, in our own communities. So I encourage those listening to not lose sight of that, and let's start working on how we can team up and collaborate and make things better in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our cities, and in our states. That's it. Thanks, Carl. This is a great show.
Amen. Thank you, Gary. Go ahead, Tisha.
Okay, so the one thing that, well, a few things, not one thing, a few things that I would like to say is that regardless to whether you have melanin in your skin or the absence thereof, we are still God's children. We are to deal with each other with respect. I say all the time, we are all imperfectly perfect. We are all flawed. We all fall short. We should never be judgmental because we, again, all fall short somewhere. Continue to be prayerful for each other, be it Biden, Trump. Somebody is going to disagree one way or the other with who we have as a president. We should be able to reach across the lines to still work together. Yes, this is an election year, and 2020 has been something of a year, to just leave it at that. But we should be able to put our differences aside for the greater good of all of us, and to be willing to make change. To have an understanding of the other person's perspective, whether you agree or disagree. To, as my husband said, it's understanding, not necessarily agreement. And continue to pray for each other, and be willing to work together. Again, judge me on the content of my character, not the color of my skin. Period. Point blank. Be nice. Give a hug. Air hug, since we social distancing. But just remember, as I said, to have compassion, with so much that's going on. I think we have lost sight of having empathy, compassion, understanding, because you never really know what someone is going through. So, be it you voted for Trump or Biden, don't let that be a hindrance. We still should love all of God's people. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Amen, sweetie. I tell people all the time, I'm so glad I married somebody smarter than me and better looking than me. And both of those are hard, but I'm just saying. No, here we go. First of all, I want to thank my panel. These are my friends. I mean, this is just awesome. And, I'm going to tell y'all something. I will throw a show together in a minute. My wife and I have been sitting at the table. I look at it and say, let's do a show. And I start texting people. And some people found out yesterday, some people today. So I just thank you so much. There are other things you could have been doing on a Friday evening, but that you think enough of Carl's Conversations to come and share your wit and your knowledge and your wisdom with our audience. I certainly appreciate it. I really do. I value your time. And thank you to my audience. My audience, you guys are awesome. The live audience, and those of you who catch these videos, throughout your day, because I know they bounce around, and we formed quite a following now. And I absolutely thank God. Let me tell y'all something. If y'all couldn't know what was going on behind the scenes in the private chat, you would understand why all of us are sitting here just smiling. We are enjoying Jesus and enjoying one another. So listen, remember this. Carl's Conversations is a safe place to have difficult conversations. I want disagreement. I want someone who thinks a little differently than I do. And remember, I'm going to do this again Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Same subject, because I believe there's so much to say. And Ron James and your wife, Lord, I get these names mixed up. What's her name, baby? Gabriel. Sorry, sweetie. I forget names. I forget Tisha's name. That's why I call her Honey Baby Sugar, because sometimes I look at her dead in the face and don't know her name. Yes. And I lay beside her every night and can't think of her name sometimes. So, Gabriel, please forgive me. But listen, you two are welcome on Sunday evening. And as you can see, I don't try to beat people up. We're just gonna have a conversation, and even if we disagree, we're still gonna love each other and love Jesus when we finish. So I'll get a panel together for Sunday, and if you're watching this and you know you want to be part of the panel, hit me up. We'll see what we can do about it. All right. So thank all of you. God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and until next time, may God bless you and may heaven smile upon you. Good evening.
Good evening.